Good morning. Thank you everybody here for joining us in the chapel and on YouTube. I'm Jeanne Mooney, your worship leader today. We're especially glad to have those of you who may be here for the first time, and we hope to see you again soon. I'd like to remind you all that now is the time, if you haven't done it yet, to silence your cell phones. Our speaker today is Reverend Katie Larsell, a retired community minister. She is a longtime member of Eastrose and currently serves as the volunteer coordinator for the Third Act Oregon, an organization for those over 60 who work against climate change and for democracy. She is also a practicing Buddhist. Eastrose Fellowship sits on the occupied territory of the Clackamas Chinook people, who were forcibly displaced from this land to the Grand Ronde Reservation in 1855. We acknowledge the sacrifices endured by the ancestors of this land, and that our presence here today is only possible because of the injustices committed against them. We recognize the inherent sovereignty of the Chinook Nation and Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde, who carry on the traditions, history, and legacy held by their ancestors from time immemorial to this day. We seek meaningful relationships with these communities that foster repair. All right, it's time to greet our neighbors. Let's take a moment and greet each other here today, both in the chapel and online. So if you wouldn't mind standing up and waving to everybody in the internet. There will be coffee after service, so you can continue your conversations back at that time. For our online guests, if you would like to share a joy or sorrow during that portion of the service, you can do so by entering it in the YouTube chat, and those will be shared aloud with everyone. I also encourage you to identify yourself in the chat so we may better acknowledge your presence with us today. Now we'll have a responsive call to worship. Love is Hard by Carrie McDonald and Teresa Cooley. I'm in yellow, and you are in white. Love is hard.
Love for people, especially those who are different from you.
Love that says, I see you as a person.
Love that says, let your unique light shine in the world, because each of our souls touches the divine mystery.
Love that says, we're on a journey together, and my fate is tied up with yours.
Love that grabs you and won't let go until your whole life is dedicated to siding with love.
Love that changes the world.
Love is hard, do it anyway.
Thank you. That was so beautiful. For our chalice lighting, I will be reading Bread for the Journey from the book Bread for the Journey, A Daybook of Wisdom and Faith by Henry J. M. Nguyen. We become neighbors when we are willing to cross the road for one another. There is a lot of road crossing to do. We are all very busy in our own circles. We have our own people to go to and our own affairs to take care of. But if we could cross the road once in a while and pay attention to what is happening on the other side, we might indeed become neighbors.
In the evening, we shall be examined on love by Thomas Centoletti. We'll be examined by love, and it won't be multiple choice, though some of us would prefer it that way. Neither will it be essay, which tempts us to run on and on when we should be sticking to the point, if not together. In the evening, there shall be implications. Our fear will change to complications. No cheating, we'll be told, and we'll try to figure the cost of being true to ourselves. In the evening, when the sky has turned that certain blue, blue of exam books, blue of no more daily evasions, we shall climb the hill as the light empties and park our tired bodies on a bench above the city and try and fill in the blanks. And we won't be tested like defendants on trial, cross-examined till one of us breaks down guilty as charged. No, in the evening, after the day has refused to testify, we shall be examined on love like students who don't even recall signing up for the course and now must take their orals, forced to speak for once from the heart and not off the top of their heads. And when the evening is over and it's late, the student body asleep, even the great teachers retired for the night, we shall stay up and run back over the questions, each in our own way. What's true? What's false? What unknown quality will balance the equation? What it would mean years from now to look back and know we did not fail. So let us sing together. You may stand if you care to, and we will be singing Come Sing a Song with Me.
right. Good morning. Today's story is called Maybe I Can Love My Neighbor Too by Jennifer Grant, illustrated by Benjamin Skipper. It follows a young girl in a big city surrounded by many different people as she explores two important questions. Who is my neighbor and how do I love them? With some help from her mama and the people around her, the girl discovers what it means to love and be loved in her community. This is Maybe I Can Love My Neighbor Too. I live at the corner of 9th and 19th, upstairs in apartment 4A. A building is going up across the street. Week after week, it grows taller and taller, climbing up high in the sky. Mama, will all the new people be our neighbors too? I ask one day. Every single person is our neighbor, she says, whether they live next door or across the street or far, far away. I know I'm supposed to love my neighbors, but how can I love that many people? I ask. Mama gives me a hug. Oh, honey, she says, I'm sure you'll find a way. Maybe start by noticing the ways others show love. A man walks by the construction site pushing a shopping cart that's stuffed with blankets and bags. The wheels hit a bump in the road and the cart almost tips over, but one of the workers moves fast to catch it and sets it upright again. Helping someone who's just passing by is a way to show love. Maybe I can love my neighbor too. Mama and I walk down to the park just like we do every day. I see a man and a woman up ahead talking to people while they wait at the light. I stare at the pictures on the man's arms while he tells Mama about people who had to leave their homes because they weren't safe anymore. Mama hands a few dollars to the woman who has a purple stripe in her hair. Giving money so people can have a safe place to live is a way to show love. Maybe I can love my neighbor too. At the park, an old man is shouting his dog's name. Shadow, Shadow, he calls. A boy runs after the dog, diving to catch him. A minute later, Shadow is back with his owner. The old man says thank you over and over and over. Helping older folks is a way to show love. Maybe I can love my neighbor too. Mama, look at me, I shout, and she waves from the bench under her favorite tree. When I'm all out of breath, I sit at the edge of the sandbox watching the other kids play. A girl tosses me a shovel and pail. Then we build the most elegant castle and dig a moat around it. We decorate it with royal flags made of sticks and seeds and leaves. That was kind of that girl, Mama says when we're walking back home. I liked seeing how she loved her neighbor, and the neighbor this time was you. Sharing toys with a new friend is a way to show love. Maybe I can love my neighbor too. There's sand between my toes, and Mama says it's time for the tub. But then we hear a knock at the door. It's our neighbors from upstairs, and they baked us a loaf of bread. Sharing good things to eat is a way to show love. Maybe I can love my neighbor too. At dinner, I tell Daddy, guess what? I learned something new today. That's what I like to hear, he says. What is it? Every person in the whole world is my neighbor, I say, and I can love them too. I could give my birthday money to someone who needs it more than me, I say, or I could carry groceries or open doors for people who aren't as strong as I am. I pull up my sleeves and show my muscles. There are lots of ways, I say. I can be kind to other kids in the park, or even bake something to share with people in our building. I knew you'd find ways to show love to others, Mama says with a smile. Every other person in the whole wide world is my neighbor, whether they live next door or across the street or far, far away. And I know I can love my neighbors too. We can love our neighbors near and far through simple acts of kindness, and these loving actions connect us all. And now the adults will continue the conversation while we head back to RE. If the adults along the center aisle will form a bridge, we'll sing the children out.
And now we will sing together. And this is like a opportunity for gentle singing together. You don't have to stand up. You can just sit and relax and sing together. So I just learned that I left out a part of the service, which is the opportunity for everyone to meditate together. And so that, I'm going to go back to that, and we're going to do it now. And it's very apropos because it's a meditation on how to give yourself compassion when you make mistakes. So, and this is also, there'll be an echo of this in my sermon, because one of the ways to love your neighbor is to love yourself. It's kind of paradoxical, but it's true. So this is a meditation on meditation, especially for loving yourself. When you make small mistakes, when you make large mistakes, when you don't live up to your own expectations. So I'll kind of talk you through it, but I'll try and give you moments so that you can integrate and be quiet. But the first step is to say to yourself slowly and calmly, this is a moment of suffering. When we make mistakes, when we don't live up to our expectations, we suffer. And then the second step is to remember that you're not alone in your suffering. There are thousands of others who have suffered in exactly the way you're suffering. There are thousands of others who are probably suffering right now. You're not a lonely person suffering all by yourself, not in any way, shape, or form. And then the third step is to, I always like to hold my heart. You could also put your hand on your own shoulder. And you call on the power of love and kindness. And you tell yourself, may I accept myself as I am. You can even say, I love you. And I don't know about you, but when I say those things to myself, I feel a very strong sense of calmness and love go through my body. It will sometimes make me feel as if I'm going to cry. Maybe I will actually cry. And it often makes me realize that when I said at the beginning, I'm suffering, that I was suffering. And that relief you feel at the end gives you a sense of how deep that suffering is. So welcome back into the room. I'm sitting here admiring the shape of the service, realizing that it would be kind of nice if we sang together before I started talking. But that's not the way it went, right? So I wanted to share a reading that I didn't share with Jeanne because I just found it this morning. It was a found reading. It was in the Morning Oregonian, and it was so perfect that I cut it out and I brought it in. It was written by Pam Williams of Portland. I was one of the thousands of participants holding on to an original sign at the No Kings protest in Portland. Mingling with the diverse, friendly, and knowledgeable crowd made me feel better. I felt some hope and less anxiety. The speeches and signs focused on the multitude of present ills practiced by the current administration. People were mad and discouraged, rightfully so. Walking home, though, a different wave of thinking overtook me. There is so much I am grateful for in the United States. I wanted to link arms with others and sing, "This land is your land," and perhaps study the Pledge of Allegiance. I could learn George Washington's farewell address and reread Amanda Gorman's inaugural poem. Most importantly, I remembered Michelle Obama's phrase, "When they go low, we go high." It was her call to maintain dignity and ethical behavior, even when faced with negativity and attacks. Of course, we get to be mad and discouraged, but we must also rise above the aggression and cruelty and think about what is worth fighting for and also what is worth singing about. What a great letter, huh? I was jealous. I wanted to have written it myself. Yeah. So I don't know about you, but it's easy to hear the phrase, love your neighbor, and think it's kind of a hallmark sentiment. You know, you can almost imagine getting a card in the mail, and you'd open it up, and it would have a nice neighborly-looking woman holding a pie or something, and it would say, "I know you love your neighbor." And then you'd open it up, and the same woman would be doing something else or handing over the pie, and it would say, "As yourself." And then, so what a easy thing it seems to be to love your neighbor. But it's not as easy as swallowing a home-baked piece of apple pie. So let's pause for a moment. Is loving your neighbor really that easy these days? Because the pressure is on in our beloved United States of America, and neighbors aren't loving neighbors these days. The political divide is deep and passionately held. Half the people of the United States are on one side or the other. All right? That's our reality. Now, recently I started volunteering for Third Act Oregon. It's an organization for older adults who are fighting and organizing against climate change. One of the things I do is call up new members and welcome them to Third Act. I talk to them about the organization and find out about them. We often have some great conversations. A lot of times, we start out bright and breezy, but eventually, some of the conversations change and get serious in a very particular way. For example, I called Elliot, and he told me about himself. He was an intense, already very active person. I told him about Third Act, and we were getting along really well and having a fun conversation, and then his voice changed. It got quiet, and he said, "But you know, Katie, it really hurts. And I didn't know quite what he was talking about. What really hurts, I asked. He says, I now think half of the population is stupid. They aren't good citizens. I no longer trust or like them. He went on, I used to respect everyone. It was part of being in a democracy. You don't necessarily agree with each other, but you share a faith in democracy. I just don't believe that half the population believes that anymore. They voted for this guy because of the price of eggs. The price of eggs. So I wonder how many of you can relate to Elliot. Have you had thoughts like that? I think it's pretty common. I've had thoughts like that. What I remember best about what he said was, it really hurts. And his voice vibrated with the pain of disliking half the population of the United States. His words followed me all day. It gradually came to me that he was experiencing a moral injury. Now, a moral injury is when you do something that hurts you in a very particular way. It's not an injury to your body. It's not really even an injury to your emotional self. Not exactly. It's an injury to your morality. You have done or are doing something that is against your values. When you don't love your neighbor as yourself, you feel it. Elliot could have said that the Trump voters had hurt him, and in a way he kind of did. But what hurt him more, and what caused his voice to drop and become confessional, was when he no longer regarded Trump voters as his neighbor. It was a change in him. When he started to think they were not worthy of his respect, when he started to believe that he no longer loved them. So I myself am inclined to believe that the golden rule is part of our human nature, because all of the major faith traditions have some way of saying, love your neighbor as yourself. Confucius was the first one to say it. He said, do not do to another what you would not want done to yourself, which sounds a little backward, doesn't it? He was the first one to come out with it, so he hadn't smoothed it out. Our own Unitarian Universalist tradition has a graphic that has love in the center of a flower, surrounded by all the different ways that love manifests. Thank you. And I think it's kind of, I gotta say, I think it's kind of funny that with UUs, we have a graphic. It's a puzzle that something that is part of our human nature, though, can be so easy to go against. Why, if we already agree about it, and all the world's religions agree about it, why is it so hard to practice? Well, Jesus of Nazareth knew why it was so hard. He put his finger right on it when he told that parable about the Good Samaritan. Is that familiar to everyone? Because if it wasn't, you probably wouldn't want to put your hand up. But so to get the full impact of that story, I'm going to tell it again. Gall darn it. To get the full impact, you have to listen to the whole story. So it starts with Jesus walking into this no-name town and beginning to preach. Jesus was a bit like a Wild West gunslinger, of course, completely nonviolent. When he was preaching in the town, he wasn't one of the locals. He had to come up with the goods, in other words, some good preaching, or he might be run out of town. And in fact, he was sometimes run out of town. And he would be challenged, especially when he first arrived. Like a gunslinger riding into a small town, there were local boys who thought they might be able to outgun him, or at least stump him. So this local religious lawyer, he was a man who knew the law, is the way he's described, stands up and asks him a question. What should I do to inherit eternal life? Now, Jesus has been around the block a few times, so he knows this is a trick question of some kind. So he's like, ask the question, or a question. What does the law say? The lawyer is forced to answer, since he should know the law, right? So he replies in two parts. The first part is love God completely. And then the second part is love your neighbor as yourself. Jesus says, do this and you shall live. He's kind of dismissing him. The lawyer, though, he's not done. He still thinks he can trick Jesus into saying something stupid. And who is my neighbor? Asked the lawyer. So Jesus then tells the Good Samaritan story. I'll just read this because it's so economically written. A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. So too, a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he put the man on his own donkey, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day, he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper. Look after him, he said, and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expenses you have. So, Jesus, while he's telling this story, the crowd, I can just imagine they might have hooted when Jesus said, a priest passed the man by. And then, hooted again when the Levite passed the man by. And they were probably kind of covertly looking at the lawyer to see what he would make of this, because the lawyer was probably more in the class of the Levite and the priest. So those were more his contemporaries. But when Jesus mentioned the Samaritan, I am pretty sure the crowd got very quiet, because Samaritans were bad news. Everyone knew that. And they remained quiet, that crowd, when he finished, especially since the Samaritan was unbelievably generous, more generous than any of them would have been, they were probably reflecting. It was a lot for the crowd to digest. Now, I'm sure Jesus knew how to tell a story. He probably stood a moment in silence, and then he asked the lawyer another question. Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of robbers? Such an innocent question. The lawyer can't even say Samaritan because he is so embarrassed to even have to answer a question in favor of a Samaritan. He says, the one who showed him mercy, he finally says. Then Jesus dispatches his local challenger by saying, go and do likewise. Go and do likewise. So Jesus sets a very high bar in the Good Samaritan. He says it isn't the love part. It isn't the love part we have so much trouble with. We know how to love. It's the neighbor part that gives us trouble. Jesus' definition of a neighbor is basically anyone and everyone. Now, Jesus didn't know the science, but science says the same thing. When someone is not a part of your family or your church or your people or your political party, then there is the possibility of that person being some kind of threat, either of violence or disease, contagion, or moral contagion. We evolved to see threats to our group. In other words, this temptation to see enemies outside of our group is also part of human nature. So we're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. We've got a human nature that is that is designed to love others. But then we also have a part of our human nature that recognizes that there's enemies out there and will close ranks with our group. And Jesus says, doesn't matter about that second part. We gotta exercise our love. So right now we are tempted to find enemies everywhere and tempted to only find neighbors to love in the groups where we agree with one another. And the more loyalty and comfort you get from your group, the more likely you are to see enemies, not neighbors, when you hear from someone outside your group. So what can we do if we want to live the kind of open, loving life that our faith calls us to live? Oh, the graphic's gone, which is fine. I didn't ask her to do it twice. But it really is saying put love at the center of your life. What can we do to love our neighbor? Here's 4 practices I recommend. And I want to say that all of these practices begin with mindfulness. When I say mindfulness, I don't mean some special woo-woo thing. I just mean paying attention. Pay attention to your feelings. Notice when you begin, like Elliot, to drift into disrespect for your fellow citizens who have different political beliefs. All of these 3 practices depend on you being mindful. So the first one is forgive yourself if you fall short. And we just practice that. Put your hand on your heart and forgive yourself. And one of the ways we forgive ourselves is by realizing we are not alone. We are all drawn into conflict. We all despair at times when we feel that our democracy is at risk. It causes me actual despair at times. Now, the second thing to be aware of is notice conflict actors and try not to be manipulated by them. Be mindful of people who will gain in some way by creating this conflict. Donald Trump is one. He's a masterful conflict actor. He profits from it. Another conflict actor is the social media we use often. Watch out for it. Social media isn't a person, but its algorithms are designed to draw interest by stirring up conflict. Realize that and try not to get sucked in. You can still use social media. I'm not going to say you can't do it, and you wouldn't follow my directions anyway if I said that. But just realize that you're playing a little bit with fire. You got to watch it. It's kind of like, if you drink alcohol, you know that there's some downsides there, and you have to monitor yourself. You have to pay attention. You have to be mindful. So conflict actors aren't all on the other side. Look for conflict actors on your own side. Sometimes perfectly good organization will slide into conflict rhetoric. Oftentimes when they're trying to get you to give them money, just notice it. You can still give them money. I'm not saying you can't do that. And then the third thing is be curious and look for complexity. When we get angry, the world flattens, and the people we are angry at look simple and wrong. My friend Elliot said they voted for Trump because of the price of eggs. I mean, there might have been some, but it's not the whole story. It's so obvious that that's not the whole story. So, and I think he said it because it was funny, because it was kind of, but you need to remember that people are complicated and they are whole people and they contradict each other internally. So, I could do a whole sermon on that. I won't. Now, Jesus never said to be curious, or look for complexity. But he did talk a lot about neighbors and forgiveness. And here's a typical story about Jesus. It's not as long as the other one. Someone asked Jesus a question. Lord, how many times shall I forgive my brother who sins against me? 7 times? The questioner obviously thinks that 7 is a lot. And Jesus answers, I tell you, not just 7 times, but 77 times. So, wow, that's a lot of forgiving, don't you think? Yeah, that is a lot of forgiving. Some biblical scholars, though, have come up with a complex explanation of why Jesus was so radical about forgiveness and care for our neighbors. Now, Israel at the time of Jesus was a conquered nation. The Roman Empire ran everything. They taxed everyone heavily to maintain their rich and ruling lifestyle. The Romans had a military with many hungry soldiers. They would come to villages and just confiscate grain and livestock when they needed it. When Jesus went from village to village, he was preaching to people who were barely hanging on. They were often in debt, and often they were in debt to each other. I mean, they weren't borrowing money from the Romans. They were borrowing money within the village. They didn't have banks then. So they couldn't really get mad at the Romans, but the arguments and feuds were stacking up in these villages as desperate neighbors fought with other desperate neighbors. Now, Jesus could see these effects in the villages he went to. He wanted them to forgive each other and treat each other like the neighbors that they were. Your neighbor isn't the enemy, he said over and over. And doesn't that sound just a little bit familiar? Right now here in the United States, we have record income inequality. There's a bill in Congress which will cut off services for the poor and middle class to fund tax cuts for the wealthy. It's too easy to come to a simple answer and claim ordinary voters are at fault for this. We are being squeezed, and the fallout could be the end of our democracy. So I think sometimes when we point our finger at our fellow citizens, we're pointing in the wrong direction. And I don't know, Jesus might have felt right at home at this time in history. So there is complexity in the world when your fellow citizens do something you just don't understand. Just try not to hate them. Get curious about why they are doing what they are doing. I'm not claiming that loving your neighbor is easy. Forgive yourself for your failures, but keep trying. Be mindful of your own heart. Notice the conflict actors, stirring things up, and stay curious about the complexities of that person who lives across the street. Loving your neighbor isn't easy, but it's worth it, and it is what our Unitarian Universalist faith asks us to do. You know, it doesn't ask us a lot, but this is a lot, and it's asking that. And as Jesus would say, go and do likewise. And amen. So may it be. I wasn't sure if you all wanted to have a discussion of this service. We have a few minutes to do that. If you have any, if this stirred something in you and you wanted to say something? Yeah? We'll need somebody to hold the mic. Jessica?
I'm Jessica. I'm just curious what you might say about the feeling of righteousness that I have inside of myself when I'm faced with these complexities, and like how do I conquer that of And is that a human nature thing that I'm coming across, that like I'm right, they're wrong, but I'm right? You know what I mean?
I know. It's like if it was like a simple formula, none of us would be doing it, right? I think that's just something you're going to have to start noticing. Just notice it. But whoa, I really know what I think here. And then, you know, and I think it always helps me when I know that, oh yeah, this is kind of in human nature. I'm identifying with my group right now. I'm fierce. I'm a fierce woman who will defend my group to the end, you know. And that's what's going on. It's just that, you know, disengage the mouth a little bit so that you're not, you know, so that you're not eviscerating somebody that you're talking to. Pardon? 11:45, yeah. Oh, okay. She's telling me, we'll just do this for two more. We'll do one and then one more. Yeah.
Here, I'll turn around. I participate every Friday in over the overpass protest on Market. And this past Friday, we got soaked. I mean, it was raining hard. And there was a guy who came by with at least 2 kids, and he drove by a couple of times giving us the finger. As it was, we were starting to end the protest. And one of the children in the car threw water balloons at us. And it was really hard for me to forgive him because I judged how he was raising his children. And I don't know what I'll do in the future. What I did, which I wasn't real pleased with, is that I shamed him. You know, we turned around and I shamed him. I said, shame on you. But, you know, that's not effective. So I'm not quite sure what to do in the future.
Right.
I still find it very hard to forgive him. You know, the kids were just learning from him.
Yeah, that's a discouraging story. Thanks for sharing that, though. It's what we're living in now. One more?
Well,
Hi, Therese again. We have a good neighborhood where I live. The neighbors all get along. When we moved there, I kind of introduced my son to the neighbors, and they were all very supportive and stuff. And last year, before the election, somebody took down my political signs that were in the front of my yard. And so I was like, oh, that sucks. So I made another political sign and put it out, and that one disappeared too. And then I drove around the corner from where I usually park, and my neighbors had this poster, like a banner. It said, "The world needs Jesus and America needs Trump." And I was like, ooh, that is so weird. But the thing was that I started suspecting that they were the ones that took my sign and started to feel kind of weird about, you know? But the fact is that they are nice neighbors. They help me. They loan stuff to me. They have a fish and chips place at a food court near my house. If I forget my wallet, she says, well, just catch me when you get home. And I think it was the grandpa that lives there that was at the root of it. But he's an old merchant marine guy, and he was the guy that sort of started the idea of the fish and chips place. And he has a red PT Cruiser, and he plays poker. But he's a person. You know, he may not be thinking clearly about what's going on, but he's just a guy, you know?
Yeah,
It was
great.
probably teenagers that took down my signs.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. I think we probably need to finish up here. And we're doing a hymn, right, Barbara?
Yes, we are singing.
Yep. Let's sing and get all that energy out of our bodies.
Oh, the sign is gone.
Please rise if you're able or willing or want to.
I can do it. Each week, we take an offering to support this church and to share it with a community nonprofit. Through August, half of our offering will go to NAYA, the Native American Youth and Family Center, which serves Native Americans from across the Portland metropolitan area. Their aim is to enhance the diverse strengths of youths and families in partnership with the community through cultural identity and education. They promote healthy living through positive alternatives to high-risk behaviors and promote the values of sobriety, family stability, culture, active lifestyles, and education. Our congregation is involved in several projects with NAYA, and we encourage you to check Petals or contact Karen Pyle for ways to join the partnership. If you are attending online, you may donate by visiting our website and clicking the donate button, or you may scan the QR code on the screen. If you are here for the first time, please let the basket pass you by and truly be our guest. The gifts of the congregation will now be most gratefully received. Please remain seated and sing our song of gratitude, number 1010 in the Teal hymnal, We Give Thanks. The words will be on the screen. And now, as we extinguish our chalice, I'm going to be reading words from Shantideva in the Way of the Bodhisattva. I hope that was understood a little bit. Therefore, just like treasure appearing in my house without any effort on my part to gain it, I should be happy to have an enemy, for he assists me on my path of awakening. And I have a couple announcements. Weeding help is urgently needed. Linda Shaldak has been diligently weeding at Eastrose by herself and needs help. She's described the weed situation as a disaster. Can you spare 60 to 90 minutes to help? She's happy to work with your schedule after 10 a.m., but is without transportation for a week or so. And we have a number for you to call her at. You want to raise your hand, Linda, so people see? There she is. Coffee hour and cleanup and flowers. We need help with coffee cleanup and flowers. The sign-up sheets are in the main hallway. Please put your name on them to bring flowers for the sanctuary or help with coffee hour cleanup. Let's get back to our habit in which those tasks were planned for and carried out ahead of time. And thank you for joining in. And I believe Anne has an announcement.
Just because we run they help with the coffee organizing coffee. And at least for now, we've chosen to do oat milk because it's the least allergenic and it's less perishable than half and half. And I realize it's new to some of you, but if you put the little brown sugar, raw sugar packets in with it, it's the least perishable and the most earth-friendly. We love the earth. The church stands for that. And we always keep it fresh, and that's why we're doing it.
And now for our unison benediction. Oh, here we go. Go out into the world in peace. Have courage. Hold on to what is good. Return to no person evil for evil. Strengthen the faint-hearted. Support the weak. Help the suffering. Honor all beings. The service has ended, and I want to thank everybody who took part in this, our guest, the Reverend Katie Larsell, and our beautiful pianist, Reverend Barbara Stevens, helpers, Tim and Bobby, thank you very much, and Ayla Beck back there at AV, and our greeters. Patty is out there, and I don't know who the other greeter is right now. April. Thank you very much, everybody. There's coffee in the Thatcher room, so Thank you very much.